You've probably heard the narrative. It usually goes something like this. The Democratic Party championed civil rights in the 1960s, so the Republican Party, led by Richard Nixon, devised the Southern strategy that used coded racist language to win over the whites in the South. This, the story goes, caused the parties to flip, creating the political map we know today. It's simple, clean, but the truth is a lot more complex. And that simple version gets a few key things wrong. Today, we're going to debunk the myths and look at what really happened. First, we have to understand what the South was like before Nixon. For nearly 90 years after the Civil War, the South was a Democratic Party fortress. It was called the Solid South for a reason. This wasn't the party of today. The Southern wing of the Democratic Party was staunchly segregationist. These were the Dixiecrats, who fought against civil rights at every turn. Republicans at the time was the party of Lincoln and had virtually no presence in the South. So when we talk about Nixon's strategy, we're not talking about him corrupting a peer system. We're talking about a political professional trying to break a 90-year single-party monopoly. The Democratic Party was already starting to crumble from within over the civil rights. Nixon didn't create the crack. He saw an opportunity to exploit it. And before we get to the 1968 campaign, we have to look at Nixon himself. During his 8 years as vice president under Eisenhower, Nixon had established a strong, positive relationship with many Black Americans in the South. He was a key part of an administration that passed the first civil rights bill since Reconstruction. He helped enforce the desegregation of schools after Brown versus Board of Education, and oversaw the continued desegregation of the military and the federal government. Black voters knew him as a visible and often supportive figure of civil rights. This a crucial context that is almost always left out of the story. This brings us to the centerpiece of the Southern strategy, the phrase, law and order. The standard narrative claims this was purely a dog whistle, a coded way to appeal to white voters anxious about civil rights protests and urban riots. And let's be clear, for some voters, it absolutely was heard this way. But to only see it that way misses a huge and vital part of this story. Rising crime rates in the 1960s were a real concern for all Americans, and that includes Black communities in the South. There has always been a strong tradition of Black conservatism in the South that is deeply rooted in faith, family, the Constitution, and community safety. This tradition values stability and, yes, law and order. To suggest that a message of safe streets and stable communities only appealed to white racists, especially when it comes from a politician with a known track record on civil rights, is to ignore the agency and the legitimate concerns of millions of Black Americans. Nixon's message had a much broader appeal than is commonly admitted because it spoke to a desire for security and transcended race. The South elected a Democratic president, Jimmy Carter, 1976. Southern states were crucial to Bill Clinton's victories in the 90s. For years, the South continued to elect Democrats to local, state, and congressional offices. So, let's put it all together. The Southern strategy wasn't a master plan to create a Republican South out of thin air. It was a pragmatic political effort to win over voters in a Democratic stronghold that was already beginning to crumble. Its key message, law and order, wasn't just a dog whistle. It was a message that resonated with a broad coalition of voters, including Black conservatives, who were genuinely concerned about the social upheaval of the 1960s. History is never as simple as we want it to be. When we dig deeper, we find a story that was much more complex, more interesting, and ultimately more truthful. And that, class, will wrap up our lesson today in our classroom, the Unspoken Curriculum. Be sure to like, follow, comment to let me know you were here, and also find me here. I'll see you guys in the next one.